Now, it was due to just be a spring update without major tax or spending changes. But with the situation in Ukraine on top of an existing cost of living crisis, the Chancellor may be forced into more action. With soaring energy bills, fuel costs and a national insurance rise that takes effect in a matter of days, things are about to get very difficult for millions of British families. Glad to say the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Keen, of course, to talk to about next week very soon, but I just want to start off with Ukraine. It does feel like there's just more relentless updates every day. Today, the mayor of Mariupol is saying thousands of residents have been forcibly taken to Russia. I don't know if you know anything about whether that's true, but is there an update you can give us on the latest you're hearing from Ukraine?
Well, I think like everyone, we're watching these scenes unfold on our TV screens. It's horrifying to watch, and we sit here in admiration for the bravery and sacrifice of the Ukrainian people. And I think everyone watching should feel really proud about the efforts that we're playing as a country to support Ukraine at this moment. Obviously, people opening up their homes, most recently to take in refugees, but we are also a leading country in providing humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, £400 million. We were one of the first countries to provide military assistance to them, and again, we've played a leading role in organising the most severe economic sanctions, something that I and my team have also been working on.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about those economic sanctions, but just on the refugee scheme you mentioned, it was last week that Michael Gove sat in that chair and told me that today would be the day we'd start to see the first refugees arriving under that scheme. Do you know how many refugees have entered the country under that scheme, and are you planning on opening up your home or giving a room? So,
in terms of the numbers, what I know is about 100,000 people, over 100,000 people, I understand, have registered their interest, and those checks are going through now, and there's checks on both sides, as Michael probably explained.
Has anyone started to come yet, though?
I don't know if some people started to come. In terms of the visas that have been approved, my understanding is about 25,000 have completed their applications. I think almost 10,000 have been granted already. With the exact movements of those people, I don't know, but those numbers are ramping up all the time. There's more investment in the processing for all of that, and as I said, it's wonderful that we as a country can play a role in lots of different ways.
Are you joining the scheme yourself?
No, I think everyone will be helping in the best way that they can, and as I said, I'm full of admiration for those who can do that. You know, my wife and I will be helping in other ways.
OK, that's fine. So President Zelensky has told Russia today that it's time to talk. How optimistic are you that we could see a diplomatic solution to the crisis? Liz Truss says she thinks it may be a smokescreen for Russia to carry out further atrocities after regrouping. Yes, well, I've obviously defer to the Foreign Secretary and her judgment on this. Encouraging that there are some signs of talks happening, that's obviously good, but you have to have some degree of scepticism about it, given the track record of these things. I think the most important thing is any talk of settlement must be on Ukraine's terms, obviously, and the best thing we can do is just maintain the significant pressure that we are bringing to bear on Putin, but also providing support to the Ukrainians in the meantime. That's the best thing that we can do, and as I said, and the Ukrainians will take the lead. Another thing that Ukraine is calling for is other countries to effectively act as security guarantors for any deal that's signed, because obviously it does feel as if Russia is demanding they not join NATO, for example, so they want security guarantees from other countries to protect them in the future. Is that something the UK would consider? Yeah, I think it's probably a bit too early to get into the details of what the shape of any agreement might look like. And again, the Foreign Secretary will be taking the lead on these issues together with, obviously, the Prime Minister. But I think the right thing now is that continue to put maximum support on Putin, both economically through the sanctions, diplomatic, and also providing military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. You know, that's what we need to do. They are displaying unbelievable bravery and sacrifice at this difficult moment. We need to be standing with them. That's what we're doing, and hopefully, you know, Putin will see sense. Prime Minister has been very clear. We want to see him fail in this adventure in Ukraine. The world has spoken almost unanimously out against it, and of course, we'd like to see a peaceful settlement. But in the meantime, we need to keep up the pressure. As you say, we have seen this unbelievable sacrifice from Ukraine. I just want to play you a clip of the Prime Minister. I'm sure you know what I'm going to play for you. It's a clip of the Prime Minister at yesterday's Conservative Scribbling Party conference. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
It's the instinct of the people of this country, like the people of Ukraine, to choose freedom every time. When the British people voted for Brexit in such large numbers, I don't believe it was because they were remotely hostile to foreigners. It's because they wanted to be free, to do things differently, and for this country to be able to run itself. Give you another example.
Do you think there are parallels to be drawn between the democratic vote to leave the EU and an illegal invasion of Ukraine where thousands of civilians have died?
No, I don't think those two situations are directly analogous. I mean, clearly they're not directly analogous, and I don't think the Prime Minister was saying that they were directly analogous either.
He's not saying they're directly analogous, but what he is saying, the people of this country, like the people of Ukraine, choose freedom every time, and an example he gives is Brexit.
I said the situations are obviously not analogous, right? One is a democratic referendum in a country where, thankfully, we're able to debate ideas in peace and
Ukraine
freedom.
wants to join the EU,
and of course, and that should be their right. And actually, that's part of the situation that Putin finds for him. He doesn't like the idea at all, right? That idea of expression of freedom. But I think, as I said, they're not directly analogous situations. But I don't believe the Prime Minister was saying that they were either.
You wouldn't have used those words, though, would you?
I don't think the Prime Minister did either. They are not.
We just listened to him.
Yeah, and I look, people will draw their own conclusions.
Exactly what the Prime Minister said. So we're not taking this out of context at all.
Yeah, and people will make up their own minds. But I certainly don't think those two situations are directly analogous, and I don't think he does either.
So you agree with the Prime Minister that the people of this country, like the people of Ukraine, choose freedom every time, such as Brexit?
I mean, I do think people in this country prize their freedom. Of course they do. And there's lots of different ways that they express that, whether it's through elections, through referendums, and other democratic means. Right now, the people in Ukraine are fighting for their freedom.
It's pretty crass, isn't it, though, to draw those two things together?
I think no one can doubt that the Prime Minister has taken a lead globally in standing up to Putin's aggression.
That's not the question I asked you.
Well, I mean, I think there's nothing crass about that. I mean, he's taken a lead internationally in assembling a coalition of countries to inflict maximum economic pain on Putin, and he has galvanised opinion, and I think he deserves enormous credit for that. So I don't think anyone could say that he.
So you don't think
that he's not absolutely focused on making sure we can do everything we can to support the Ukrainians at this time. A fact that's been acknowledged by the Ukrainian leadership, actually, and you heard that when the President addressed Parliament, but also more generally, I think it's acknowledged the UK has played a leading role. The Prime Minister deserves enormous credit for that. But of course, these two situations are not analogous, and no one is saying that they are.
Whatever happens with the war, the world has changed. Do we need to start to look at increasing defence spending?
Well, we had something called an integrated review a little while ago, which takes a comprehensive look at the threats that are facing our country and then sets out a plan to address those.
Before you.
Well, actually, it mentioned if you look that review, it said that Russia was probably the biggest state threat that the UK faced. So in that sense, credit to our defence and intelligence teams to have the precedence to recognise that, and that's why we already have increased defence spending significantly.
Just on that, you have increased it significantly.
Well, hang on, can I, Sophie, if I could just finish, because this is important. So just a year and a bit ago, at a time we're in the midst of coronavirus, for most departments, we didn't provide long-term funding settlements. The one department for whom we made an exception because of the circumstances was the Ministry of Defence. And they received a 4-year settlement, an extra £24 billion over the 4-year period. That's the largest cash uplift in MOD funding since the end of the Cold War, and will ensure that we are not just meeting our NATO 2% target, but will remain one of the leading defence spenders in NATO. And we did that before.
But once you take into account inflation, as the RUSI think tank has said, defence spending is actually going to be falling in real terms in 2023 and 2024. You say that you've met your targets on the percentage-wise, but the 2019 Conservative manifesto pledged to increase the defence budget above inflation every year. You're not going to stick to that, are you?
Well, if you look in the autumn at the forecasts that were published with the higher inflation in there, what you see is that defence spending is increasing in real terms over this Parliament. It's £24 billion extra, and that was done before all of this, because we knew that we wanted to invest in our defence.
So no more money for defence spending?
I think, in general, if you look at what we're doing across public spending, we're spending a lot, and the focus has now got to move on to, and I'm sure we're going to get on to talk about cost of living and people's taxes. So before we get into that conversation, I think probably the last time I was here, we were talking about the amount that the government is spending is going up quite a lot over the course of this Parliament, an extra £150 billion, more being spent by government on all sorts of things, defence, schools, hospitals, by the end of the Parliament.
To me, no more money for
I think what people want is say, OK, we get that you're spending a lot of money across the board. We now want to make sure that all that money, our hard-earned money, is going to be spent really well. And that's my focus now.
No more money for defence?
And we gave lots more money for defence, £24 billion, but we did it before everyone else.
Now, of course, we talk about cost of living there. The UK has understandably imposed sanctions on Russia, as others have as well. Can you level with people on what that's going to mean for us here in the United Kingdom?
So I know this is the number one thing that people are concerned about, and people are working hard. They're struggling with the price of things going up. I get that. I'm spending all my time focused on that. And I want people to know, and they should be reassured that, look, I will stand by them in the same way that I have done over the last couple of years to try and make a difference where I can. But as you said, the actions and the steps we're taking to sanction Russia are not cost-free for us here at home. I can't pretend that it's going to be easy, that government can solve every challenge, or that I can completely protect people against some of the difficult times ahead. But what I can say is where we can make a difference, of course we will. That's what we've done over the past 2 years. And most recently you saw that with our announcement to help people with energy bills, £9 billion, £350 of support to people. They'll get £150 of that in April. So look, where we can make a difference, of course we will, but I get that this is difficult.
How high is the risk of recession?
I think, look, you wouldn't expect me to speculate on that. What I would say to people is they should feel confident about the strength of our economy. Okay. We're actually, last year, were the fastest growing economy in the G7. And if you look at where unemployment is, we are now back to the levels of unemployment that we saw before the crisis, so very low levels, record numbers of people on payroll, record numbers of job vacancies. So, look, the fundamentals of our economy are really good because we've recovered well because of the actions we've taken. But look, the outlook is uncertain, as you've said, because of what's happening in Ukraine.
I want to get a bit of a sense of your spending priorities, and I understand there is only so much you can tell us ahead of next week. Fuel duty is an area where there's been lots of speculation about. Should people feel that there is action that may be taken there?
And I know this is frustrating for you, for people watching. Obviously, I can't comment on specific things. But what I would say is I understand that. I have a rural constituency. People are incredibly reliant on their cars, and this is one of the biggest bills that people face. So we're watching it go up, right? And we're all seeing that. And when we're filling up our cars, I get that. That's why we've frozen fuel duty already. I announced that in autumn. It's the 11th consecutive year of fuel duty freezes, and that really helps people. I know that.
And of course, fuel duty, energy, these are things that people on lower incomes spend a disproportionate amount of their income on. It hits them particularly hard when the bills go up. And things are about to get worse for them as well, of course, because in April, benefits are going up just 3%. Inflation, we're expected to be around 8%. Can you at least say that you're going to be targeting, for your help that you can give, the people who are going to need it the most?
Yeah, that's what we have done over the past couple of years.
I'm trying to throw forward.
Yeah, and of course, you can. I always say, judge me by my actions. And over the last couple of years, you'll see, and all the research that's published shows this, that those on the lowest incomes have actually seen the greatest amount of support from this government.
So there will be action, you think, targeted towards particularly those on low incomes?
So actually, if you look at what we've already done, and energy, you mentioned energy, which is a good one to
I acknowledge you want to talk about your record, but I'm just aware of timings.
Well, energy, this is something that's about to come in, right? And there are lots of different ways that you could help people with energy bills, and you're going to have Rachel Reeves on later. So one thing that the Labour Party said is that we should just cut VAT on energy. That is the opposite of targeted, and it would mean someone like you or me, who probably has a larger than average energy bill, would get a larger discount. Where actually what we've done is provide £150 to 80% of British households, 4 out of 5 English households. That is obviously going to mean a lot more to someone on low incomes, as you said. It's much more targeted support, and it will get there much quickly. So we're doing exactly as you have said.
We've talked about how difficult things are going to get, and that you can only mitigate so much of that. But, of course, this is the time you are choosing to go ahead with tax rises in the form of national insurance. I think it's pretty fair to say that those are going to be going ahead. If you're not going to scrap it, should we expect to see at least some movement on the thresholds at which people start paying these taxes?
I think, take a step back. Why are we introducing a new health and NHS and care levy? It's because I care deeply about the NHS, and I know that the country does as well. We were faced with a situation where millions of people were going to be waiting years to get the treatment they wanted as we recovered from coronavirus.
We had a bit of a windfall in the form of higher tax receipts.
I'll get to that in a second. We didn't think that was acceptable for anybody, and we wanted to address it. And the team at the NHS are prepared to work incredibly hard to work through that backlog. I wanted to make sure sure that they had the funding that they need and deserve in order to do that. And that's why we're introducing this levy. People can be reassured every penny of it, unlike all other taxes, every penny of this tax goes straight to the thing they care most about. Thanks to the actions of the Health Secretary, they can also be reassured that it's going to be really well spent because we're making sure we root out inefficiency and we're reforming things, and we're actually announcing more ambitious targets on that today, doubling the NHS efficiency target in partnership with them, which is great news. But yes, Ukraine has come along and it's made things more difficult, but it hasn't changed the underlying situation that we've got this monumental backlog that we want to work through. And this is, although it's a difficult decision, I think it's a fair way to do it. It's a responsible way to do it.
I just want to show you the graph, the following graph. Now, this shows, it's from the IFS, and it shows the UK tax changes under different chancellors. Anything above the line is tax increases, and everything below the line is tax reductions, and red is Labour, blue is Conservative. So you can see you here right at the end, Rishi Sunak. So in 2 years, you've raised taxes the same amount as Gordon Brown did in 10 years. How's that desire for a low-tax economy going?
I guess what that chart doesn't show is all the other chancellors, which ones of them had pandemics to deal with. Right, which one of those had to introduce furlough, which one of those had borrowing higher than at any level since World War II? That's the bit that's not on that chart, and that bar on the right is a direct reflection of those things, which are, I think anyone would say, pretty exceptional, or hopefully pretty exceptional. And last time we had a pandemic to deal with over a century ago, borrowing had never been that high since World War II. It's the biggest recession we experienced as a country ever, or in 350 years. So that's not on that chart either.
So you're hoping your bar is going to come down?
I do think it will come down over time, and we started on that. And I'd point people to my comments at the budget last autumn, where I said, yes, have we had to make some difficult decisions? We have. I believe those are the right decisions. There are responsible decisions for the country's economic security going forward. But those are done now, and my priority is to reduce people's taxes. We started at the budget, and you talked about those on the lowest incomes earlier. The first tax cut we put in place was on people on universal credit. They face quite a high tax rate when they're going back into work. We cut that significantly. It's a £2 billion tax cut for millions of people. It will mean a single mother, for example, working full-time on the national living wage will be £1,200 better off. So that was the first tax cut, and my priority over time is to keep cutting people's taxes, get that bar down, and that's where we're going to head.
Just finally, will Boris Johnson lead the Conservatives into the next election?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you.
Chancellor there, talking us through the details that are coming up in his spring statement. Now,